Welcome to another deep dive.
Sure.
Today we're going to be looking at some Kabbalah ideas
Yeah.
that you were sharing with me.
Yeah, some really interesting excerpts from audio lectures on Kabbalah.
Yeah, and I gotta say, some of this is like really mind-bending stuff. Like, it's making me rethink how I see the world.
It's true. Kabbalah often challenges our assumptions, like
Yeah.
the way we usually think about things.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about these lectures is how they blend this ancient mystical wisdom with, insights that feel very relevant to the world today.
Totally. And one of the first things that jumped out at me was this whole concept that we can't actually perceive reality directly. The true essence of it.
Right.
It's almost like we're only seeing a shadow of what's really there, like a projection on a wall.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor. It's like we're
Yeah.
missing the whole play behind the curtain,
Yeah.
the source of the projection.
Yeah.
Kabbalah uses this term klai,
Okay.
which translates to vessel or tool, to describe how perception works.
Yeah.
So it's like each of us has, a specific set of tools that shapes how we see and understand the world.
Okay.
And these tools include our senses,
Mm.
our, mental models, our beliefs,
Yeah.
our language even.
So it's not just our senses that are limited. It's like our whole way of processing information is filtering reality for us.
Precisely.
Mm.
It's not just our senses. It's
Yeah.
the whole framework through which we interpret everything.
Mm.
And the lectures give this great example, the story of Columbus
Oh, yeah.
and the Native Americans.
All right.
When the ships first appeared on the horizon, the Native Americans literally couldn't see them.
Wow.
And it wasn't because their vision was bad.
Right.
It was because they lacked the mental framework, the klai, to comprehend such a thing.
That is such a powerful example. It makes you wonder what ships we might be missing in our own lives just because we haven't developed the right klai to perceive them.
Exactly.
I mean, if our tools are limited, how can we even begin to grasp the true nature of reality?
That's a core question in Kabbalah. And one answer it offers is that we need to start by recognizing the limitations of our current perception.
Okay.
The lectures use this analogy of a sixth finger.
Okay.
They can't desire something that we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So the first step is to kind of become aware of what we can't see, to recognize the gaps in our understanding.
Right. So acknowledge that we're working with the limited set of tools, but then how do we actually expand our perception? Do we need to develop some kind of sixth sense?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. You see, Kabbalah suggests that we're not just passive observers of reality, we're actually active participants in its creation. It's not about developing extrasensory perception. It's about understanding how our internal world, our thoughts, desires, intentions, shapes our external reality.
Hold on. Are we talking about some kind of think positive thoughts and your dreams will manifest kind of thing? Because I've tried that and it doesn't always seem to work that way.
It's not quite as simple as that Kabbalah teaches that there's a higher force, a source of pure light and energy that kind of animates all of creation. They call this force the creator.
Okay.
But we don't perceive the creator directly. Instead, we project our own qualities and attributes onto this abstract light.
Okay.
And that's what shapes our individual reality.
So it's like we're each wearing a pair of tinted glasses and the color of the lenses is determined by our internal state.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
The lectures use the example of a caveman looking at a modern city.
Okay.
He wouldn't see the buildings, the cars, the technology, because his klai, his mental framework, wouldn't allow him to perceive those things. But the city is still there, existing in a reality beyond his limited perception.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm starting to get this. But if we're all projecting our own realities, doesn't that mean there's no objective truth? Is it all just subjective?
That's the question that has puzzled philosophers and mystics for centuries.
Right.
Kabbalah suggests that there is an ultimate truth,
Okay.
a source of absolute unity and wholeness. But the way we experience that truth is always filtered through our individual perception. It's like we're all looking at the same mountain, but from different angles and distances.
Okay. So how do we move beyond our limited subjective perspective and get closer to that objective truth? Do we need to somehow shed our tinted glasses?
That's where the path of spiritual growth comes in.
Okay.
And it's not an easy path.
Yeah.
It requires a willingness to confront our own limitations, to question our assumptions, to actively work on transforming our internal world.
Okay, before we go any further down that path, I need a breather. This is a lot to process, but I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah, let's take a moment to let these ideas sink in. We've covered some pretty mind-bending concepts about how our perception shapes reality, but we've only just scratched the surface of what these lectures have to offer.
Well, in that case, lead the way. I'm ready for the next level of this deep dive. Okay, I think I'm ready to jump back into these Kabbalah lectures. We were talking about how our perception shapes reality and how we each create our own version of the world based on, our internal state. But I'm still kind of wrestling with this idea. If we're all constructing our own realities, how do we interact with each other? Like, do our realities ever collide?
That's a really great question. And it gets to the heart of how Kabbalah views the interconnectedness of all things. The lectures introduce this concept of Rashomon, which are like spiritual imprints or memories. They're not physical things, but rather energetic patterns that carry information about our past experiences, our desires, our actions.
So it's like we're each carrying around a backpack full of invisible baggage from our past.
In a way, yes. But these Rashomons aren't just personal, they're also collective. We inherit Rashomon from our ancestors, our culture, even from humanity as a whole. And these Rashomon are constantly interacting with each other, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in ways that we're often not even aware of.
Okay, this is starting to sound a bit like karma. Is it the same idea?
There are definitely some similarities. But Kabbalah goes beyond the idea of simple cause and effect. It suggests that these Rashomon aren't fixed or predetermined. We have the free will to choose how we respond to them, whether we reinforce the negative patterns or transform them into something positive.
So it's like we're all part of this giant cosmic tapestry, and our individual threads are constantly weaving in and out of each other, creating patterns and influencing the overall design.
That's a beautiful way to visualize it. And the lectures emphasize that even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect throughout the entire system. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected, and our choices have consequences not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Right.
But if our perception is so limited and we're all influenced by these invisible Rashomons, how can we possibly make conscious choices that lead to a more positive reality?
That's where the concept of the path of light comes in. Kabbalah teaches that there are two main paths we can take in life, the path of pain and the path of light. The path of pain is the default mode, the one we follow when we're driven by our egoistic desires and fears. It's a path of suffering, separation, and conflict.
And the path of light is the alternative.
Yes. The path of light is a conscious choice to align ourselves with the Creator's intention, which is to give and to love unconditionally. It's a path of growth, connection, and fulfillment. It's not about denying our desires or suppressing our emotions. It's about transforming them, refining them, and directing them towards a higher purpose.
I like that. It sounds less about being a saint and more about evolving as a human being. But if it's a conscious choice, why don't more people choose the path of light? It seems like the path of pain is much more common, at least from what I see in the world.
That's a fair observation. And the lectures address this, explaining that choosing the path of light requires effort awareness and a willingness to challenge our ingrained habits and beliefs. It's not the easy path, but it's the path that ultimately leads to true happiness and fulfillment.
So how do we actually start walking this path of light? Do we need to meditate on a mountaintop or give away all our possessions?
It's not about external rituals or actions. It's about an internal shift in perception, a change in our attitude towards ourselves, others, and the world around us. The lectures emphasize that studying Kabbalah itself can be a powerful tool for facilitating this shift.
How so?
By understanding the principles of Kabbalah, by learning about the nature of reality and the forces that shape our lives, we can start to see the world through a different lens. We can recognize the interconnectedness of all things, the power of our choices, and the potential for transformation that exists within each of us.
So it's like Kabbalah provides a map for navigating the spiritual landscape.
That's a good analogy. And like any good map, it helps us to orient ourselves to choose our direction and to avoid getting lost along the way.
Right.
But the journey itself is still up to us.
This idea of Kabbalah as a map is really resonating with me. But if we're all starting from different points with our own unique set of Rashomon experiences, how can there be one map that works for everyone?
That's where the concept of the upper world comes in. Kabbalah teaches that there's a spiritual realm, a dimension of reality that exists beyond our physical senses. And this upper world is the source of all creation, the blueprint for everything that exists in the physical world.
Okay, so if the physical world is like a reflection or projection of this upper world, then Kabbalah is like a way to access the source code, the underlying structure of reality.
Exactly. And by understanding the laws and principles that govern the upper world, we can start to understand how to influence the physical world in a more conscious and deliberate way.
This is blowing my mind. It's like we've been playing a video game our whole lives without realizing there's a whole other level of the game, a hidden dimension, where we can actually change the rules.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And the lectures suggest that Kabbalah is like a cheat code, a way to unlock this hidden level and start playing the game on a whole new level.
So if we can access this upper world and start influencing reality from that level, does that mean we can actually change the course of history? Can we solve problems like poverty war and climate change through Kabbalah?
That's a question that Kabbalists have been grappling with for centuries. And the lectures suggest that the answer is both yes and no. We can't simply wave a magic wand and make all the bad stuff disappear. But we can change ourselves, and in doing so, we can change the world around us.
But if we're all just individuals, how can our individual actions possibly have a global impact? It seems like a drop in the ocean.
That's where the concept of critical mass comes in. Kabbalah teaches that there's a tipping point, a threshold that needs to be reached in terms of collective consciousness before a real shift can occur. And each individual who chooses the path of light, who works on transforming their own egoistic desires into altruistic intentions, contributes to that critical mass.
So it's like each act of kindness, each moment of connection, each effort to align ourselves with the light adds another grain of sand to the scale, and eventually it tips the balance in favor of a more positive reality.
Precisely. And the lectures emphasize that we're living in a time of great urgency, where the need for this kind of transformation has never been greater. The choices we make now, both individually and collectively, will determine the course of human history for generations to come.
That's a lot of pressure. But it's also incredibly empowering to think that we each have a role to play in shaping the future.
Exactly. And the lectures offer a message of hope, reminding us that we're not alone in this journey. There are people all over the world who are waking up to the truth of Kabbalah, who are choosing the path of light, and who are working together to create a more just harmonious and sustainable world.
Well, consider me officially on board with this mission, but before we get too carried away with saving the world, I think I need another pause to let all this information sink in. My head is spinning with Rashimo, paths of light, and critical masses.
Take your time. These are deep concepts that unfold gradually, layer by layer, but each layer reveals a new dimension of understanding, a new way of seeing the world, and our place in it.
I'm ready for that next layer. Bring on part 3. Okay, part 3. We've been exploring some pretty complex concepts, and to be honest, the more we unpack, the more I realize how much there is to learn.
Yeah, Kabbalah is a deep well of wisdom.
It is, and one thing that's really been sticking with me is this idea of a spiritual reality, this upper world that exists beyond our usual perception. But if it's so hidden, how can we even be sure it's real?
Well, it's a question that Kabbalists have been wrestling with for centuries. And they argue that just because we can't see something with our physical eyes doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, think about things like gravity or magnetism.
Right.
We can't see the forces themselves, but we can observe their effects.
Right. We see the apple fall from the tree, so we know gravity is at work, but is there a similar way to see the effects of this upper world, the spiritual dimension?
The lectures suggest that they point out that the state of our world, the wars, the inequality, the environmental crisis,
Right.
it's a reflection of a deeper disharmony. It's like we're trying to build a house on a foundation that's cracked and crumbling.
So the chaos we see around us is a symptom of a spiritual imbalance.
That's the idea Kabbalah teaches, that the root cause of our problems lies in our egoistic nature, our inherent tendency to focus on self-interest above all else.
Okay.
And this egoism creates separation, competition, and ultimately suffering.
But isn't that just human nature? Are we really expected to just transcend our basic instincts?
Well, Kabbalah doesn't advocate for denying or suppressing our nature.
Okay.
It's about transformation. It's about refining our desires and intentions. It's about recognizing that true fulfillment comes not from getting what we want, but from contributing to something greater than ourselves.
You're talking about altruism, right? That seems to be a recurring theme in these lectures.
Exactly. Kabbalah emphasizes that the force of creation, the creator, operates through the principle of giving, of bestowal.
Okay.
And as we align ourselves with that force, as we cultivate altruism within ourselves, we tap into a more powerful and harmonious way of being in the world.
Okay. I can see how shifting from an egoistic perspective to an altruistic one could potentially create positive change. But how do we actually do that? It seems like a pretty tall order to rewire our entire way of thinking.
It's definitely a process, a journey, not a quick fix. And the lectures stress that studying Kabbalah itself can be a powerful tool for facilitating this transformation. They describe it as a science, a system of knowledge that reveals the laws and principles governing both the physical and spiritual realms.
So by understanding the rules of the game, so to speak, we can start playing it more effectively.
Precisely. And one of the most important rules, according to Kabbalah, is the concept of connection.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we're not isolated individuals, but rather interconnected parts of a vast web of life.
Right. We touched on this idea of interconnectedness before with the rashimo, the spiritual imprints that we share and pass on to each other.
Exactly. And the lectures go deeper into this, explaining that the more we focus on connection, on giving and supporting others, the more we align ourselves with the force of creation, with the light that sustains all things.
It's almost like we become conduits for that light, channeling it into the world through our actions and intentions.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And the more people who choose to become conduits for this light, the brighter the world becomes. It's like each individual act of kindness, each moment of genuine connection adds another spark to the flame.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But I also have to admit, I'm still grappling with the scale of all this. It's hard to imagine how my individual actions could really make a difference in a world that's facing so many challenges.
It's true that the problems we face can feel overwhelming. But the lectures offer a message of hope, reminding us that even small acts of kindness and connection can have a ripple effect, inspiring others and creating a chain reaction of positivity.
So it's not about single-handedly saving the world. It's about doing what we can where we are to shift the balance towards light.
Precisely. And the more we align ourselves with this intention, the more we open ourselves to the guidance and support of the upper world. The lectures describe it as a kind of feedback loop. The more we give, the more we receive. Not necessarily in material terms, but in terms of spiritual fulfillment and a sense of purpose.
Wow, this deep dive into Kabbalah has been quite a journey. We've covered so much ground, from the limitations of our perception to the power of altruism to this mind-blowing concept of an upper world that's influencing our reality.
It has been a fascinating exploration, and I hope it's sparked a sense of curiosity for our listeners, a desire to explore these ideas further. You know, Kabbalah isn't just a set of beliefs, it's a path of self-discovery, a way of life that invites us to continually question, grow, and connect with something greater than ourselves.
Well, you've definitely given me a lot to think about. And maybe, just maybe, you've given our listeners the nudge they needed to start their own exploration of Kabbalah and its wisdom. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. May this journey of discovery continue to unfold for all of us.